The other thing I'd say is that these 4 speakers were selected out of many, many speakers who were selected from a large group of nominations. So these are the best of the best. And they give great presentations. Don't want to put any pressure on them, but they do. And what I would advise you as students to do is say, what are they doing? What's good about their presentation? Because you're going to have to make presentations later in life. It's a great learning experience for you, no matter what the topic is, of how to make a presentation. Okay, our first Gilbreth lecturer is Christian Hubicki. Christian is an assistant professor of mechanical engineering at Florida State University and the Florida A&M University College of Engineering. As director of the Optimal Robotics Laboratory, his research specializes in bipedal locomotion, specifically optimization methods that apply to both legged robotics and biomechanics. He received bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from Bucknell University with an undergraduate minor in physics and music. He earned a dual PhD in robotics and mechanical engineering at Oregon State University. His work has been featured in numerous media outlets, from Science Channel's Outrageous Acts of Science to The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and the winter 2019 issue of the National Academy of Engineering's flagship quarterly, The Bridge. And here's an interesting side note. He was a contestant on Survivor, David versus Goliath. And he almost won.
Almost.
The title of his talk is The Challenge of Bipedal Robots. Please welcome Dr. Hubicki.
Well, thank you for that warm welcome. Is the mic on? Can you hear me? You answer, what an affirmative yes that was. Thank you. All right, so let me, open up my laptop first. I guess is the first step of any presentation. You know, learning good presentation notes, open the laptop before it starts. That's number one. It should be popping at any moment here. Fantastic, it's on. So, thank you all for coming out. My name's Christian Hubicki, thank you for a lovely introduction. I'm going to talk today about bipedal robots. So robots that get around on 2 legs. You know, here's 2 examples right here. So, as it was said, I am the director of the Optimal Robotics Laboratory. We specialize in bipedal robots. This is actually our sort of flagship bipedal robot. It's a robot series called the Cassie series of robots. You'll see it's kind of built like an ostrich, which is pretty cool because we do a lot of ostrich research. But the goal to get this robot is to be able to get this robot running around in the real world as well as a bird can, like an ostrich can or a human can. And that's what we work on. And our Cassie robot down in Tallahassee, Florida, is called the Tallahassee Cassie, by the way. So thank you for the laugh. So, yeah, and so in terms of a broad overview of the kind of research I like to do, you know, here's just a couple of vignettes of it. So we did some research on this walking robot on a treadmill here that I'll talk a little bit about later. We also have some interesting research where we collaborate with biologists having to do with ostriches, which is fun. We don't have the ostriches in our lab. We go to other labs to do that kind of work. Here's a little project about jumping on ground that is weird and you know, it's not rigid. Okay, it's like sand. And here's this kind of odd-looking robot called Atreus, which I'll talk about a bit later. So, and I'm going to talk about 2 things in particular. Is why is this a hard problem, and how are we trying to solve it? And how has it been getting better? And there have been 2 key ways that I'll talk about. One is smarter design, that we just build the robots better. We're learning cool lessons as to how to make them better robots. And number 2 is smarter algorithms, the control, the programming, the stuff in the computers is getting much better as well. And I'll talk about specifically what's kind of on the cutting edge at the moment, not just in my lab, but across the whole field. So you can see what lots of labs out there are doing, okay? But you might be asking yourself, why legs at all? Why build a robot with legs? Well, my answer is very simple. They're cool, okay? They're cool. I mean, they're cool. It's a perfectly fine answer. That's really my reason, if I'm really honest with myself. But from a practical standpoint, you're probably thinking, you know, why not wheels? That's really what's kind of implied by that question. I mean, we see wheels all the time. Cars are great at getting around when in environments where everything's kind of normal and flat and reasonable, but sometimes there are extreme examples where some guy with legs could use that to land. He's fine. He's fine. Spider-Man's fine. Don't worry. Okay? So in extreme scenarios, you sometimes want to be able to land on your feet, right? So that's an extreme example, but more sort of everyday examples. I mean, we have 2 legs, so we build our world around us. We build our world with stairs. We build our world with curbs and things we have to get up and around. And that's especially important when we want to make robots that go places where we can go, but don't want to right now, like a burning building. Not my favorite place to hang out. But sometimes we have to send people in to save people. Wouldn't it be great if we could send in a robot to be able to scan the building and see if there's anyone inside and then carry them out and run up the stairs of an apartment that's on fire, for instance, okay? And finally, we have 2 legs ourselves, and sometimes we lose the ability to walk with them. So one thing that we like to do is learn good control algorithms for robotic prosthetics and robotic exoskeletons to help people walk better if they've lost the ability to walk, okay? Those are 3 of the big reasons, okay? And in terms of a research field, there are all kinds of robots out there. We're going to see some interesting talks about autonomous driving right after mine. We're going to have a great presentation on that. But the most common robot that you would ever see is going to be in a factory environment, assembling a car, right? And there's a reason why those are the robots you see all over the place. It's because that, comparatively speaking, is an easier problem than having robots that are around other people in other cars, okay? The robots here are kind of by themselves, just doing what they do. Here's a car. I'm going to rivet here. I'm going to move this thing here over and over and over again. It's very reliable, very repeatable. But when you start throwing people into the mix, it gets more complicated, right? So, but there's a little less predictability as to what's going on. But you're still kind of on a flat road. You're still, you're not off-roading necessarily. You have a pretty good idea of what's around you. You just got to be aware of people, right? In a really extreme situation, you're out in the woods, you might have no idea what's around you. So what I'm really showing is that there's more uncertainty in your environment as you go out into these settings. And by attacking legged robotics, by going out into the field, we are actually attacking a lot of major problems in robotics overall, okay? So I'm going to talk about legged robots, so I can't not show a Boston Dynamics video. I think it's the law, all right? So people have seen these videos on YouTube probably. Here is the Atlas robot by Boston Dynamics. It is conveniently it's actually located in Boston. It's a funny coincidence. And look, it's doing all these cool gymnastics flips. It's going to watch that. It's going to jump around there. And it's going to bow at the end. Very cool, right? Awesome. And you have their Spot robots, their quadruped. And this is actually the first robot that they've had that they're actually going to start selling, or at least giving to other laboratories and other companies to start using after having been in business for over a decade. Okay? So you might say, great, legged robots, it's solved. I can retire. I can go back on Survivor or something. But there's a problem, okay? Is that we've got a lot, we see some good examples of robots doing some stuff. But if we want robots to be great and actually really usable in the real world, they have to be all 4 of these things, right? They have to be somewhat efficient at getting around. They have to be agile. They have to be able to jump around stuff. They have to be robust. That means if you trip them, they're not going to fall. If they walk on weird terrain, they hit a curb, they're not going to fall over. And versatile. You want to be able to do lots of things. Pick up a box, put it on top of a thing, dance around, do lots of things at the same time. So these sort of 4 quadrants are what we want robots to be able to do, okay? But it's very hard to do all these at the same time, and no one's done it yet, okay? And particularly, I'm going to focus a little bit on robotics in general having an energy problem, okay? So in robotics, and we have something that's called the cost of transport. So who heard of the phrase miles per gallon in cars? Hands, show of hands? Great, great. So this is kind of like gallons per mile, right? How many gallons of gas does it take to move a mile? Or with a robot, how much of a battery charge does it take to walk or run or fly a certain distance? So a lot of people ask me, why not just use drones for everything, right? Okay, and because drones are good at getting around stuff, they don't fall over so much. At least they don't trip on things, but they fly. So, but you can compute how much energy it takes for a drone to fly around, and it has a cost of transport of 2, all right? And there are no units to this number. Who here is taking physics? Who's taking physics? Okay. So what happens if you divide a kilogram by a kilogram? They cancel out, right? The units cancel out, all right? So the units cancel out, so there's no units on there. I'm not sloppy. That's actually literally the answer is 2, okay? So it takes 2. So the bigger the number, the more energy it costs, right? For the most efficient walking robot, which I'll show you a little bit later, it's actually 1, right? And there's a reason for this, is that because we have the ground to help us stay up, right? We can stand on the ground, whereas a drone, it's spinning up its rotors all the time, forcing down air just to stay in place. So it's more efficient to have a legged robot. But humans, you can compute this too. You can measure how much energy it takes for us to walk. It's 0.2. We're really good. Congratulations. All right, so we have a long way to go. So how are we attacking this problem? First, it's smarter design. All right, so and I'm going to show you why. This is a robot, as you might see it in a factory, and this is a very brave gentleman who has strapped himself to this robot and is flopping himself around, going for a joyride. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do that, but one thing I want to point out to you is that this robot is extremely rigid. It's very hard. Every single joint is not flopping around, and there's a motor at every single one of these joints, so it's in complete control of this system. So this guy can be really confident it's not going to flop him into the ground, right? So that's how robots have been traditionally built, because we have a lot of confidence in the algorithms when the robots are built in a rigid way with lots of motors, right? But it's not the only way to build a robot. In fact, we're learning in robotics to be more flexible, and that less in terms of motors can be more. That actually can help you to have fewer motors on your robots. And for this, we actually look to nature for some good examples. Well, why? Because nature's pretty cool, okay? I'll show you a few examples, all right? So this is a legged animal. This is a chicken-sized bird. It's called a guinea fowl, all right? It's kind of a South African bird. You can eat it in select locations. But so what this bird is going to do is it's going to run over what it thinks is solid ground, but this right here, just tissue paper. It's just tissue paper, okay? And over a pothole. So it has no idea that it's about to run into a trap. Watch what happens. It steps on tissue paper, boop, keeps going. That's really impressive. This is work done by a friend of mine, Monica Daly. She's actually at UC Irvine right now, by the way. She's a professor there in the biology department. So this is amazing. This is like you running along the road, and all of a sudden there's a trap door up to your knee, and you keep going. Amazing. So yeah. So, and here's another example from nature. This is a rainbow trout, okay? And it's swimming upstream. It's swimming right here behind a rock. And you saw here, it just swam upstream. Did you see that? It swam upstream like that? See? This is in an experiment where the researchers were showing, hey, this rainbow trout can swim upstream. And you might say, well, that's unremarkable. I've heard of fish swimming upstream. I've heard of salmon doing that. But it might surprise you to know that this fish is dead. What? The fish is dead? Yes, the fish is dead. So what's happening here? So the water here is flowing over this rock, and then the water gets split, and all of a sudden there are these little vortexes or vortices, and they start swirling around, and they apply pressure to this fish. And because this fish is flexible, rigor mortis hasn't set in yet, so it's still flexible, okay? It actually forces the fish into a swimming motion, and it swims up the stream. Amazing. I wish my dead robots could do that. They cannot, okay? So being flexible, a dead fish can swim upstream. That's being flexible, doing nothing, you can do a lot, right? And also, when we talk about flexible tasks, here's a guy, he's making pizza dough. He's flipping it all over the place. Look how confident he is. That guy's awesome, right? And this guy, he's just kind of flopping around his little onion and his stuff like that. We're really good at doing complex stuff. And this guy is not in complete control of this pizza dough at every given instant. He tosses around his pizza, right? So, we are learning from this lesson in robotics and starting to design robots to be more like this, okay? So this is a robot from 1990, a robot. It's actually just an erector set, okay? This is a piece of metal, here's a piece of metal here, which is attached to a joint here, piece of metal here, 2 feet, so it's a walking robot. But there is no motors, there's no batteries, there's no computers, no nothing in terms of power sources. It's just a piece of mechanics. But this guy, Tad McGeer, put it on a very gentle slope. And that's going to be its source of energy, okay? Because what he's going to do is going to give it a push. And it walks. this piece of mechanics just walks down a slope in a way that looks really kind of natural, but there's no motors on this at all. So we use this as a blueprint for finding ways to make robots more efficient by taking out actuators. We still have a few, but we take some out at the same time. All right? And here's one example of how a group at Cornell University did this. They took this exact concept, and they made this very simple proof-of-concept legged robot. It kind of has 4 legs. So it doesn't fall side to side. But this thing just clips-clops along, and it walks 40 miles on a single battery charge. So that's really good. Who here can walk? Who's walked 40 miles recently? I got to unraise my hand because I have not. So very impressive, right? Again, but not very versatile. It just kind of walks in one direction and slowly turns. But it was a proof of concept for like this kind of quadrupedal robot, right? And further, people are learning to make the robot flexible. This is a little hexapod robot called Rex, okay, R-H-E-X. And these little C cups here, they're springy, so the robot can do cool parkour moves and go over cool rough terrain as a result. So they're making the robots more flexible so it can flop up and down stairs like that. So pretty cool stuff. And it's a lesson that we learned when we were making this robot called Atreus. Okay, we tried to make it this flexible robot where basically it's just a ball and a spring. Okay, kind of like a pogo stick. In fact, we call it Atreus because it stands for assume the robot is a sphere. Okay, that's why we built it. That's what it stands for. Okay, so this was like a 5-year-long project, which culminated in us taking this robot to a big robotics challenge in Pomona about 5 years ago. And we got the robot
based on all that we've already
down on these
about how to build the machine, about how to control
it was pretty
the
fun, and this is a lot of work. All right, because this robot, while it was flexible,
useful in the real world,
and had comparatively few actuators, it made it very difficult to control. So we started off small. We started off by just having it step in place, okay? And then we would give it little pushes
based
to make
on all
it more
that we've
stable.
already
Figure out how to make it more
about
stable.
how to build the machine.
Well, what kind of pushes do we give it? We hit it with dodgeballs, okay? So we hit it with dodgeballs, and you try to tune up the controller, change the gains around, and boom, boom. Eventually, we took down the robot. Like, what happened there? Well, we hit the emergency stop button. That's why. We kind of cheated. All right. So that's how we would tune up the controllers of this thing. But it's a step. But then we said, hey, let's start trying to do obstacles. So we told the robot to basically move forward and walk over this obstacle. But the robot is blind, just like blind to it. Has no idea it's there. It just steps on it and just keeps going. This is my favorite experiment right here. So it steps on it, had no idea it was there, so it kind of tripped a little bit. I'll rewind it for you so you can see. It trips. What? It's on its toe right there. Right? And recovers and keeps going. So we're very proud of that, okay? All because we created a robot that's more flexible, that does less, and we figured out how to make the robot stable, and now it can do a lot of stuff. So we're very, very pleased with that. And finally, we took it out to Research Stadium in Corvallis, Oregon, where the robot was built. We told it to go faster, up to its top speed, and then we got to the end zone. We told it to stop, touchdown. Okay. So, and we hit our top speed. But a funny thing happened that we didn't expect. We went and looked at the data of this robot. Okay, and this is the force on each of the legs, and this is time. And you'll see, so this is like left leg, right leg, right leg. And they have these little gaps here. Who wants to know who can guess what those gaps are? Anyone? It's in the air. It's in the air. The robot started running. We didn't tell it to run. We just told it to go faster. And the way the mechanics worked, it just ran as a consequence. So smarter design did a lot. So we were very happy with this result. And this has been the basis of future robots that actually have arms that can do more stuff. This is a digit robot by Agility Robotics. They took the same core technology. This is my friend Mikhail. And they built a new version of the robot that they are now trying to sell where it can deliver packages. I'll show a little bit more like that, more on that later, just to show it's a more practical robot nowadays. So I'm going to finish now by talking about smarter algorithms. All right? How have algorithms gotten better? And one way is through what we call high degree of freedom optimizations. So in a robot, when we say a degree of freedom, we mean basically how many joints do we have on our robot? If my arm is like this, got 1 joint, 2 joint, 2 degrees of freedom. Well, robots tend to have lots of them, right? but it's very hard to do the computations to come up with the best way to move all these joints. And that's been very hard. So we've been working very hard on this problem in order to control this robot that was called Duris. And it was designed to be an efficient robot, a more energy-efficient robot, okay? And the tricky part is we had all of these degrees of freedom, and we developed an algorithm. It uses something called an interior point method and direct collocation, where it would generate all of the different joint motions for every joint on this robot, such that it was as efficient as possible. And so we said, hey, walk as efficiently as you can. The algorithm said, here's the answer. Put it on the robot, and it walks, okay? You know? And one thing that's cool about it, well, one, you all see how excited I am? It's 6 in the morning right now. It was an all-nighter, so that's why it looks that way. So, but one thing that was cool about this is we just told it, walk as efficiently as you can, and it would walk in a way where it land on its heel and roll onto its toe and keep going. And in a way that's sort of falling from step to step to step. It feels very natural. And we didn't tell it to do that. The algorithm said to do that. So that was fun. But I'm sure some of you are wondering, where do you buy robot shoes? Well, the answer is the shoe store, okay? All right? So we unbolted the robot foot. We took it to Journeys, okay, because it was the only place that was open at 10 p.m. on like a Thursday night or something in Atlantic Square Mall. And this guy got out the shoe sizer. He said, it's 14 men's. Got out some models. We tried them on. So I took some photos. He was very professional about the whole thing. So that's how you get robot shoes. All right. So that's how high degree of freedom optimizations can make cooler and more efficient locomotion, right? But I imagine many people have heard about machine learning. I mean, it was introduced the idea of AI in the lecture beforehand. Who's heard of machine learning? Thank you. I'm glad you're all awake. It's great to know. That's awesome. Yeah, because you hear lots of cool stuff about it, and it is really a very powerful tool. So you're probably thinking, well, aren't these cool robots I'm seeing, that's just like AI or machine learning on them, right? It's actually not as much as you would think, okay? That's for a few reasons. Learning often requires learning from examples, right? Learning from your failures. You try something, you say, did that work? Oh no, try something else. And these machine learning methods can often take thousands and thousands of times of failure before coming up with something that works. I will not let you fail on my robot 1,000 times. So as a result, it's very uncommon that people will use machine learning algorithms on these robots in order to make them walk. But it's very uncommon. But I will show you an example where someone has actually done this. This is a group at Oregon State currently with their own version of the Cassie robot, where they actually train the robot to walk using what's called reinforcement learning. So this is actually, in my opinion, it's basically the cutting edge of this capability. This is very recent that they were able to do this in this limited context on the treadmill, but it's very impressive they got to do this at all. And the way they did it is they created a computer simulation that was really, really accurate and have it fail in the simulation thousands and thousands of times until it learned how to walk. And then they put it on the robot. So that was a lot of work and very impressive that they managed to do that. But another way that we actually do implement machine learning a lot is not teaching it how to move, it's learning what you're moving on. What is it that you're actually walking on? You're learning the terrain, if you will. So what do I mean by that? So with the Atrius robot, we took it out in the park, okay? We actually had it walking up and downhill. This is actually one of the first examples of a bipedal robot outside of a laboratory with a nice, firm floor where everything's nice and controlled. We would go up and down, and we would have it walk over some weird terrain. Then the next year, Boston Dynamics brought out their Atlas robot and had it tromping around in the snow. Extraordinarily impressive, okay? But one thing but this is still uncommon for bipeds, okay, to go out in the real world. And I would claim that they're reacting, not adapting to the environment. I know that's the case for Atrius, and we can guess about Boston Dynamics' Atlas here. So what do I mean by that? Meaning that every step where the terrain is weird, it's a surprise. It has to react to it, like, oh gosh, something happened. Oh gosh, something happened. So Miss in the black top right there. Have you? Yes, you. Yeah, sorry, in the black sweatshirt. Yeah. Have you ever walked on sand before? Is every time you step on sand a surprise when you're walking on the beach? Or do you learn you're walking on sand? You learn you're walking on sand? Thank you for following my leading answer. Yes, you learn you're walking on sand, right? So that's the idea. So we learned that we're walking on sand, right? So that's the idea is we want to learn the terrain instead. So that was the basis of this project here. where we started off with a version of Atreus with just one leg, and it just hops up and down. But I grabbed a box of pebble, basically sand, but really thick sand. I just wanted the robot to just kind of bounce on top of the little box of rocks here, and then bounce out again to see what happens. And so we tell it to bounce in the box of rocks. It plummeted all the way down to the bottom of the box of rocks, which was not what it was designed to do. And eventually it jumped out of the box of rocks, which we're happy didn't break the robot. Thankfully, I was very calm during the whole process. But you don't want to surprise the guy who designed the controller with stuff that came up that didn't learn. So you don't want to, you don't want to surprise me. So we want to learn the terrain from the experience. So what we did is we set up a new experiment where we would actually describe the terrain as a machine learning process, something called a Gaussian process regression, which if you look at the math, it looks gnarly, but if you look at every single operation in here, you'll find like exponentials and stuff. It's anything that you can find on a calculator that costs more than $5, okay? So it's actually not as complicated as it appears, what a Gaussian process is. And we're going to learn the terrain from experience with this new hopper. It's a little tiny hopper we put on sand, okay? And it's got to try to jump to this line, all right? Exactly to that line. But it has no idea what it's jumping on. But every time, it's going to learn a little more about what it's jumping on and then change its strategy, okay? So it jumps, misses, hits it. 6 jumps. It learned what it's jumping on. And why is that important? Because if we learn what we're jumping on, it's very easy to change the task that you're doing. You can try to tell it to do something else. For instance, here's the robot jumping on hard ground here. And it keeps bouncing. What if we didn't want it to do that? What if we wanted to have it stick the landing like a gymnast, okay? Well, we just change the optimization we run. We tell it to do something different. Boom, it does it. So 2 things I want to point out about this. This is just acting on a plan. It's not reacting to what happened and fixing its strategy on the fly. It's just acting on a plan. Number 2, when Michaela Maroney stuck the landing at the Olympics, there was a judge in the background who I want to point out had a very reaction that I can identify with. So anyway, that's how we use machine learning on a lot of robots, okay? So I'm going to finish up real quick with convex optimizations, real-time optimizations, or algorithms. These are algorithms that run so fast that they run taking milliseconds to compute what to do. And so if you ever hear the phrase convex algorithms, they are often used for these kinds of tasks. This was a robot that has to walk into a simulated nuclear disaster. It's the IHMC Robotics, DARPA Robotics Challenge Team. This is one of the Atlas robots. And they use real-time planning algorithms that are really fast. It's also used to make the digit robot pop out of the trunk of this car and deliver a package, okay? It delivers a package to the front door. This is the digit robot from before, okay? And it uses convex algorithms to plan how to get around stuff. And finally, it's what's used for this cool robotic cheetah at MIT, the MIT Electric Robotic Cheetah. They are telling it to do stuff on the fly, and it's performing on the fly. It's incredibly impressive. So if you ever hear the phrase convex algorithms, kind of like convex lenses, that's what that's about, okay? And finally, we don't know a ton about what Boston Dynamics does, but in the robotics field, they've kind of hinted to everyone publicly that these kinds of algorithms, that they use convex algorithms to do all these sweet parkour moves, okay? So finally, in conclusion, what's next, okay? So what are the things that we're looking at? A couple things. One is we are trying to figure out how to make better actuators that are as good as muscles. And that's really hard to do. Number 2, we're actually looking at trying to make our robots softer. Not just flexible, but having soft skin, so when we bump into stuff, it doesn't hurt people. And also teaching them how to assess different risks, like bumping into people. These are things we're working on. But mostly, I just want to point out that all of these processes of trying to figure out how to make robots work like we do really makes me think about what I do on a daily basis and why I'm somewhat good at it. And it's a kind of a new way and cool way to look at life. And that's, to me, why robotics is so cool. So with that, I would love to take your questions, and thank you so much. And you follow me on Twitter and Insta. So. Yeah.
Which student has the first question?
Oh, I see a question up there. Yeah. Yeah. If you shout it, I'll repeat it to the over the whole. Yeah. Or.
My name is DJ Cruz. I'm from the Urban Math Collaborators in Long Beach.
take the mic, actually, if you could, so that way everyone knows exactly who you are and where to find you.
Okay.
So,
Hi, my name is DJ Cruz. I'm from the Urban Math Collaborative in Long Beach, and I wanted to ask, were any of those videos like animations or something?
no, all those robots, every single one of those is a real machine in real life. They are not CGI. That is, all the ones that I made, definitely not CGI. I'm not that talented. And the Boston Dynamics videos, we've seen enough of it in real life. We know it's real.
Oh, can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me look at my book. Oh, do you have any robots that are like uncontrolled, like really like are trying to build a mind, like kind of like that?
So they're really hard. So the question is, are there robots that are really hard? They're so hard to control, we don't know how to control them yet? Is that what you're saying? What do you mean?
Well, I mean like the build, like what you said, the machine
learning?
There we go.
Machine learning, yeah.
Like, do you have some that are just like slowly like building like what they know, their knowledge on what to walk on and stuff like that?
So that is still ongoing. It's not there yet. So like we're showing kind of these proof of concepts, like, oh, we can walk on sand. Good job. Now the next thing is like, okay, how do we would take a robot, actually throw it out into the real world, and then you can have it build like a library of stuff. Like I look at that, I know that's carpet. But if I pretended I knew nothing in the world, how do I know that's not swamp? It's because I have some knowledge of the world to know that's not swamp, or quicksand. I'm not going to die in it. Okay, that's quicksand is not that dangerous. It's actually a myth, but it's just an example. But so building a library is one way to achieve that, and that's still ongoing work.
Oh, well, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. So who next? Is one right? This one? Yeah. Since you got the mic right there, we'll do one right there. Okay. Sorry. We'll do him next. Okay.
All
never mind.
right.
I'm really indecisive. You.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Benjamin Lavid. I'm a part of the Urban Math Collaborative.
Oh, thank you.
I was, I was wondering why you decided to get into this industry and what makes you want to build robots. Like,
Great question. So, why did I get into this at all? Is because I liked Legos as a kid. All right, that was my path for robotics. But really, the reason I love robotics is the puzzle of getting a machine to do things that we do. Like, I pick up and toss and catch this thing. I didn't even think about how I did it. But this forces me to think about how I did it, because I have to teach a robot who is dumb as rocks, who doesn't know anything, how to do the same thing. And that's just so cool to think about that puzzle. And it makes me really think, like, rethink life. That's why. Yeah, thank you. Yes, what, right here? Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Alfredo Pastan.
Yeah.
My name is Alfredo Pastan. I'm from Computer High School in Long Beach. I was going to ask you about the machine learning processes for your robot.
Yes.
I see that you used
Gaussian process regression?
Gaussian process regression, like the interior point system.
Yes.
I was wondering, and you were saying like some of them are, one of the robots like was put in a simulated environment.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could build an algorithm or an AI from scratch and use Q-learning as a way to learn an environment itself and simulate like the ground for it? What do you like? Is that like the next step process for like the bipedal robots in the future?
Well, so first off, I believe I heard you say Q-learning. Did I hear that right?
Like, yeah.
Excellent reference. Round of applause to him for knowing what Q-learning is. So, great question. So Q-learning, the reinforcement learning that was used on the robot, on the Cassie robot on that treadmill, that's the most similar thing to Q-learning, because Q-learning is a version of reinforcement learning, right?
Yeah.
The tricky part with any of these learning things is what we call the curse of dimensionality. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah.
So yeah, the curse of dimensionality means the more options that you have for the algorithm to do, every one of them you add makes the problem exponentially more difficult. Now, recently neural networks have made this more reasonable.
Like
function
TensorFlow?
approximators have gotten better. You're nodding your head. I'm very proud. Yes, I bet that if you could talk to the guys and girls who did the reinforcement learning thing, and they'd probably say, yeah, we can do Q-learning. Maybe we try that. So that is definitely an option. Like, but by no means do we know that that's the best one.
Thank you.
Great question. Yeah.
Hello, I had a mic waiting for my question over here.
Oh, you have a mic? Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Sorry. There's so many of you. Okay, all right. Oh, sorry. taking charge. You give the presentation next. So go on. Yes.
So my name is Carlos Rubinstein. I come from Samuel Academy.
Thank you. Guys, what's your question?
And the question I had is, you say that these robots function on a certain algorithm. Would you ever say this algorithm gets somewhat unpredictable to the point that it can cause danger for either the humans or the robot included?
So the danger with algorithms, the primary danger, is not knowing what you're asking for, right? I mean, it's literally doing what you ask. So it's mostly the danger is accidentally telling to do something that with unintended consequences. Like, you could tell the robot, hey, your job is to get to that door. And you're like, okay, but if you don't tell it to look out because there's a bunch of small children in the way, that would be bad, right? Right? So it's not like, a lot of people, I'm sure people are thinking, is the robot going to come self-aware and come and make its own decisions and not listen to us? No, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about it actually listening to us. When we're not careful about what we ask it to do. So that's where it gets dangerous. We don't think about safety in our instructions. Make sense? Thank you so much.
Got one over here.
Right over here? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Zane Freitas from High Tech, and I just wanted to know how many joints are most ideal for a bipedal robot?
I'm going to give the most common answer in engineering. It depends. It depends. Okay. It depends on what you want it to do. Like if you wanted to just get around over some vaguely rough stuff. I mean, the Atrius robot had 6 motors on it. I'm pretty sure like things like VCRs. I think have more as many motors as Atrius did, right? So that was good at getting around at rough stuff. But if you wanted to be able to pick up boxes and things, you need more actuators. So it depends on what you want it to do. Yes. So who has the microphone next? All right, over here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Malik from the Urban Math Collaborative in Long Beach, and I was wondering, what advice do you have for someone who wanted to create their own robot?
So, sorry, what about creating a robot?
What advice do you have for someone that wanted to create their own robot?
What advice do I have for someone to create their own robot? All right, number one, figure out what kind of motors you can get, right? A lot of the more expensive stuff are the motors. Nowadays, the computers are pretty cheap. They're like Arduinos. Who's used an Arduino before? Yeah, they're great. Those convex algorithms I showed before, you can solve those on an Arduino, just so you know. People do it all the time. So I think that I would get some motors, just see if you can get it to spin. That's the first thing I tell any student, is to get a motor to spin the way you want it first. And then I go from there. I build up from that point. So yeah. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Willis from Samuel Academy, and I have a question. So we're coding codrones in our class, and how complex does the coding for these robots become after a while?
That's a great question, and it really the short answer is it depends, but in an interesting way. So the question was, how complex can the coding be in these robots? And it can really vary a lot. So the code that made the Durus robot walk around, part of the code was the physics of the robot, which we had to use equations of motion. Who here has heard of Newton's laws? Newton's laws, good, right? You can use Newton's laws to come up with equations for how these robots move, right? So for the Durus robot, if you were to print off the equations for how it would move, it would cover a football field, 2 football fields. So that'd be a lot of characters in your code, and the algorithms that solve it are pretty complex. But the Atrius robot, the control code that ran that, because the design was what we wanted it to be, it was very capable. The code was about 150 lines to run that robot. So for the main control algorithm. So it can be extremely simple or very complicated. So what I recommend for any students who want to get into robot programming or programming for robots, look into object-oriented programming. That's a good place it's advanced level programming I'd recommend people to learn. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. So how are we doing on time? Yeah. One more question? Yeah.
I'm Christopher Carcosa from Cabrillo High School in Long Beach, and my question is, how can bipedal robots advance today's economy, and how can it make biological science more efficient?
So how can we advance the economy with these bipedal robots and make basically we say biological research more efficient? So that's a wonderful question. In terms of the economy, what you'd want bipedal robots to do is you want them in scenarios where you maybe we're having to do dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. Like on a construction site, you might have one person who's directing a whole bunch of robots to do a whole bunch of things. So, and you can amplify productivity, like on a construction site, for instance. The biology and the sort of medical research side, it's really interesting. If you wanted to do medical research on patients who have had strokes or have some kind of, or have tremors or have things that impede their motion, you don't want to, it takes a lot of process to figure out how to safely do experiments on people. And because sometimes the experiments are like push the person when they're walking, right? But one thing that we're trying to do with bipedal robots is have it walk like a person and then introduce to the robot's code the equivalent of a seizure or a tremor. So then we can see how the robot walks and we can try treatments on the robot instead of the person at first. That's one way that we can apply it to medical research. Okay, thank you for the question. All right, it looks like we're, yeah, what, are we going? Yeah, we're done. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Christian.
Oh, back up. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did you see how Christian jumped up on there? Yeah, the question is, was a robot better than Christian?
It's debatable.
Debatable. Okay. Christian, we'd like to honor you for your work, great work, and it was a great talk. Thank you. So you have a certificate here that says the following. Christian Hubicki is hereby honored as a recipient of the Gilbreth Lectureship in recognition of outstanding contributions to the field of robotics and presentation of this lecture on the challenge of bipedal robots at the NEE 2020 National Meeting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll go downstairs this time. Oh, computer as well? Yeah, thank you.
Our next Gilbreth lecturer, Dorsa Sadiq, is an assistant professor of computer science and electrical engineering at Stanford University. Her research interests lie at the intersection of robotics, learning and control theory, and algorithmic human-robot interaction. Specifically, she works on developing efficient algorithms systems, including cars, that safely and reliably interact with people. She received a bachelor's and doctoral degrees in electrical engineering